fucking roof!
Mate, welcome.
Hey,
thanks for popping by.
Absolutely.
Good to
thanks
see
for
you.
having me, guys. This is
So
fantastic.
we're chin-chinning a bit of...
This has been
Bit of strong coffee. This will be a first.
bit of Cafe Deluxe.
Is this the first time?
Because...
First time
a
without
teetotaler
alcohol.
on the-
it's, actually, I did do... Did I do one by myself or one
Russ.
with you? When we did, it was an early morning. I know with Russ
Russ,
Russ didn't drink, but I didn't know that, and I was on the whiskeys.
You'd already started.
Oh man, I'd already started. I was a mess. I was just deep diving while he was going up into an enlightened state of being.
So funny, man.
We did someone the other day, and it was early morning. Harlem.
Oh, yeah. Harlem, yeah. That was
But you don't
coffee.
drink at all, so
I don't drink at all.
and-
Never have. No.
So you've never had a drink
I've had
trying?
a beer.
Or?
I think maybe I can count on one hand my whole life.
Oh wow!
As recently as maybe 4 or 5 months ago with G.
Mate.
Of course.
That just
I
could
didn't
have
wanna-
almost said
I
your-
didn't want to make him feel any worse than he already did, so I went ahead and had one with him. And
Wow,
and
man,
then
what
I
does it
said,
taste
like?
I said, that's it, man.
Did it taste
he's like,
nice?
He's like, no, have another one. I go, no, that's it. I'm done.
Did it taste okay? Was like,
Yeah, it's fine. I
Oh
mean,
really? Because generally, like my memory of beer, kind of like cigarettes too, for a lot of people, is that the initial taste isn't pleasant.
It's
and
not
something that
good.
grows
I don't
on
know
you.
why people like it,
Yeah, yeah.
but it's
because
you
we
know,
get wasted.
it seemed to calm him down quite a bit. So.
So it's literally like a mother putting a dummy
it's
in their
kind of
own
like,
mouth to
it's
pacify
like,
the
here,
baby.
Let me tap your back,
Pacify
and,
the
sing
angry
you
one.
a fucking lullaby. And,
Yeah, I remember the first beer I had was, I guess it was 14. No. Yeah, I think it was 13 or 14. I think the first official beer I had was about 14. And just I remember thinking, wow, this is what I've been waiting for? Like, this is the big moment?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a real disgusting, that hopsy taste. It's really acquired taste.
Yeah.
And cigarettes too. But then I guess when you're young, you're like, I must push on for self-respect
Right. Yeah.
and coolness.
yeah,
Yeah, but I
it's
guess
like the first time I ever went to Hollywood, I was like, really? This is a fucking disaster, man.
it's
Dirty and
Yeah.
you know, it's like, what?
It's a real
Really?
spin out, isn't
Yeah.
it? When you
Yeah.
walk through Hollywood.
This isn't the movies.
When was the first time you went to Hollywood?
Oh, when I was early 20s. Yeah.
So it's
I was-
is it always been grungy, or is Hollywood something that like
ever since I was there, it was.
Right.
Yeah, I was there for almost 15 years, and it was always just a piece of shit.
you lived there for 15 years?
Yeah.
Where
The hills are nice though.
I didn't live
right?
in Hollywood, but near there. Yeah.
Right. So you had
Yeah.
access.
it was
Hollywood
just
hills
always-
are nice though, right?
Hollywood Hills are nice.
I had some friends that
yeah,
lived
the
up
hills
there.
are really nice.
I spent a bit of time
But
up
Hollywood
there.
Boulevard is just
Yeah.
a fucking.
And you're just driving
It's
and you're going
strangely
nowhere. It's like
grungy.
suburbia.
The weirdest thing about it is when you're going down Sunset, it's pretty crappy, and then like all of a sudden you cross one street and you're in Beverly Hills, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like literally from here to that couch, and you're like
I must have not gotten to Beverly Hills.
like a vortex you go through.
Yeah,
and
right.
it's
Just
weird.
the money starts growing out of the pavement.
Yeah, right.
It's all
Exactly.
on.
Everything's all clean and nice. It looks like Singapore.
Yeah.
Oh wow. All right.
Wow.
That's money. Big.
Yeah.
So where did
Lots
you
of
grow
money.
up?
I was born and raised in Oregon, just
Right.
north of California, kind of in this on the west coast of Oregon, sort of over the mountains. So they call it the Pacific Northwest. Mm-hmm. Like Seattle to Portland is kind of the corridor there, the I-5 corridor. And I was born and raised just south of Portland, about 80 miles in a little town called Corvallis.
Okay, it's a beautiful part of the world.
Yeah,
that
it's really gorgeous.
I haven't been up that far up the coast, but just that western coastline up above, the northern part of California.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal, and there's just a really down to earth, happy bunch of people around there.
Yeah,
like,
it's-
everyone's so super happy. It's insane.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's like, it rains like 300 days a year there.
Oh wow.
So there's more suicides per capita than anywhere in the
okay.
world.
Well, that goes against my happiness
but,
streak.
but it's no one leaves.
Okay.
Like, everyone
well, maybe
loves
the
it,
suicide rate is
So it's
is
like happy,
ratioing
miserable
out.
people.
Yeah. Well, the suicide rate's kind of causing the ratio of happy people to be
maybe.
later in life.
It
It's
could
sort of
be,
going
yeah.
up. So that's going
Yeah.
more towards that. How close is it to Seattle?
It's about a 4.5 or 5 hour drive from
Oh, it's still
Seattle.
that
So
far.
it's pretty
but that
close,
whole area
yeah.
is pretty similar in terms of weather.
Yeah, it's almost
Wow.
exactly the same.
Would
Yeah.
you say that your I don't know how you got into music, but would you say that it was at all affected by the weather in terms of like, you know how Seattle and for me, I compare it to a place called Toowoomba in Australia, like near Brisbane, where a lot of awesome musos I came out of that place because it was just kind of, I mean, there it wasn't rainy, but it was just hot and dead and nothing to do, and
Right.
it breeds this longing for creativity. And
I think there's probably something to that. My parents were both musicians, and they were in a band when they had me, and it wasn't like a pro thing. They were just kind of like weekend warrior types, and they had this band that traveled up and down the coast and
they were
played.
in the band together.
Yeah.
Wow,
My
that
mom was the
usually-
drummer. My mom was the drummer. My dad was the bass player.
Czech drummers.
And then when they
Fuck
found
yeah.
out my mom could sing, they said, "Hey, get out here!" And she kind of pulled the Phil Collins type deal, and they hired another drummer, and she fronted the band. And
Oh,
that was-
really?
yeah.
And what happened to the singer in the original singer? Just
I don't
booted?
even know who was singing at that point. Maybe one of the guitar players or
gotcha,
something,
okay.
but one of the
Yeah.
guys. But yeah, she came out, and obviously, she was the only girl in the band, so they made a
Were they original
marketing
band?
choice
So-
there.
Covers or
Covers?
Covers,
Yeah,
yeah.
like a bar band,
Yeah.
So
yeah.
did
So
you
that's
break
kind
up
of,
the band, mate?
Did I? No, I didn't. No, I was. They carted me all over the place.
Oh,
There's
so-
pictures of me
yes.
in like drum cases sleeping.
Oh my
Oh,
God,
yeah.
that is just destiny,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah,
That's
it's pretty crazy.
fantastic.
Yeah.
I hope you still got photos of those. Oh, that's great.
Wow.
Yeah, I got photos of me when I'm 2 and 3 years old downstairs on my mom's drums. Pink, champagne sparkle, Ludwig's,
That is
So,
gold.
I think, the Oregon thing, the rain thing, I think there's a big, it's all agriculture, right? So everybody works in, lumber and textile mills and stuff during the week, or they did back then.
So
Not
it's hard
anymore,
work,
really.
hard work in town, yeah.
And then they would go to the bar or the equivalent of the pub, at night and on weekends and listen to music. And that's what my parents were in those bands.
And what were they doing during the week as far as work goes? Were they
My
involved?
dad owned his own business. My family business was floor covering since like 1946. My great-grandpa and grandpa and my dad all kind of owned this thing together, and Ogden floor covering.
So
my
he
dad
would have looked at you and going, "Oh no, like he's been born on a drum case. He's not going to keep up the old family flooring tradition."
Yeah, they never pushed me to.
Ah,
They
good on
never,
them.
they
That's great.
never
That's
ever
good.
suggested, that I do anything other than that.
Is it? Do you really feel like music was in the bones then? Because I mean, often there's so many cases of amazing singers and songwriters where their children just are naturally incredible. In terms of there's the opposite where like a great songwriter comes out of really harsh conditions, and that
Yep.
sort of forges a need to be creative to deal with the stress and the horrors of the childhood or whatever. But then you sort of assume that a kid that's had it easy won't be a good songwriter. But then you see these incredibly successful songwriters that give birth to more successful, incredible songwriters, and you realize it's
Right.
really in the blood quite often.
Yeah, I don't know. I've thought about that a lot. Is it nature or nurture type thing? I love that Tom Petty quote. Most great songwriters I know had at least one fucked up parent, and I was lucky enough to have two.
Right, okay.
And that was kind of
You
my
could roll with that.
situation. My parents, through that whole band situation, both became pretty intense alcoholics. Which is one of the reasons why I don't partake.
It's understandable, yeah.
And my childhood was pretty that way, So I locked myself in my room and played drums.
Wow,
That's really
okay.
kind
So
of
there
how
was a lot of... So you don't specifically relate to the idea that you had two solid good parents. It was a struggle.
They were great parents, but they had serious issues, and there was a lot of. I grew up in the '80s, so I was a latchkey kid anyway, and I just escaped all that bullshit by music.
Was it a feeling of you were sort of isolated and watching from a distance, and it was more through neglect because they were so caught up in their own inner problems, or do you feel like you were personally sort of attacked from that, like through their behavior?
No, they never did any shenanigans, but it just didn't. I don't know. It was. I mean, even now I'm 46, and I just don't like being around that culture. You know,
the drinking culture.
Yeah, people just getting fucked up all the time, and you know,
Well, you're in the right business.
I can hang. Yeah, I know. Ironically, right? Yeah. Well, I've had my fair share of it, obviously. But it's. It doesn't bother me being around it until it gets out of hand.
All right. So you can choose to leave when it gets crazy.
Yeah.
That's why you don't live in Australia.
You know what? I'm done. You know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
So my folks were moderately controlled by most people's standards, probably. You know, musically speaking. You know, musicians come from that kind of culture, or whatever. My parents were not like, they weren't beating the shit out of each other or anything like that. My dad and my mom were. Really, until my dad died a year or so ago, they were really good friends.
Oh, that's great. That's
good.
But were you close to both of them up through that? That's great.
Yeah, they got divorced when I was 3, and but they remained friends because of me. You know, I mean, they had me, so they were really close until my dad passed away. And
has that brought you closer to your mother since then, or is still the distance physically from her?
There's so much, you know, my dad sobered up before my mom did. He sobered up when I was like in the 5th or 6th grade, and my mom didn't.
Okay.
And so I really didn't have that great of a relationship with my mom until I was in my early to mid 20s. She was around, but she wasn't present, you know?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And so...
Yeah.
And I was just full tilt music, you know, career, and really since I was 5 years old. I mean, I started playing drums when I was 5, and I just never stopped, you know.
So you are definitely an example of that then, having the kind of childhood that pushes you. I was assuming that it was the other way around, but it sounds like you are the result of sort of going insular and just directing all your energy on what you want to produce.
Yeah, certainly when I was a kid, I was just, you know, my dad used to say, we couldn't have stopped you if we tried. Or, you know, we're just not going to do anything else. School, girls, kid, you know, friends, sports, nothing. You just didn't give a fuck. You were just
focused.
Constantly.
God, I wish I'd had that focus.
Same.
So, looking back, what did you say? You're 46.
Yeah.
Has there been any
47
period that you would say something did pull you away or distract you or cause you to lose focus?
Yeah, I got married pretty young. I got married when I was 19 the first time. And she was not having the lifestyle of...
Oh, really?
You know,
it was one of those... Ooh. Marry a muso and tell him to stop playing music.
Exactly,
Oh,
yeah.
nice.
I love everything about you until, you know, And so for a couple of years there, I slowed down quite a bit and got pulled into some other things that she was into. She was a real religious person, for instance.
Ooh.
And I got
Christianity?
And I got kind of sidetracked into that for a minute. And then...
You had a born-again experience? Or?
Yeah, well, I was raised in a Christian home. You know, my dad, after he got sober, he became a Christian and stuff. And then when I was in high school, he was like, "What the fuck am I doing?" And he rejected it all and went back to his old hippie ways, which was great. And then, but anyway, I got involved with this lady, and she's a great lady, but we were married for 12 years. And,
oh, wow.
It was pretty good.
That's a decent stretch.
Decent stretch. And for, I'd say probably the first 3 or 4 years of that, I was pretty into her thing. And then I don't know, one day.
You saw the light and walked away from it.
Yeah.
You saw the dark and walked away from the light. Or whichever way.
To the dark side. You know? So we had moved to LA by that point, and I was doing studio work, you know, doing sessions.
So you did keep up playing through that time?
Yeah, I never stopped playing, but I just wasn't really pursuing, you know, what I wanted to pursue at that point you know, for a couple of years. And then finally I convinced her, you know, hey, let's get to LA. And, you know, I was only 20, maybe 23 at that point. And and she agreed to do that. So we moved down there, and then I just went for it. Once I got into that scene and got
laser focused,
got around people that understood me, and we're pursuing the same things that I was trying to pursue.
Makes such a difference, doesn't it? When you especially when you've got people around you that are better than you, or just further up
That's
the ladder.
Really important, actually. Yeah.
Really important. Sharpening you, the competitive nature. I mean, LA at that time was a real friendly competition kind of a place. It was. I made a lot of friends. I had a lot of drummers that I had on my wall as a kid, and reached out, and I met them somewhere during, maybe going out to a club or something, and saw them play, and they come up, hey, what's up, and meet you, and I mean.
Yeah, that's got to inspire.
Mentors and people who really were great to me when I first got down there. And I think probably if that wouldn't have been the case, I don't know that I would have stuck it out, because it's a pretty hardcore.
Man. Be a bit of a
scene.
dogfight.
Yeah, it must be intense.
Was there one specific job that kicked off your career, like one session?
Good question I was about to ask.
There was not really sessions, but people, producers. Work with
that wanted to work with you personally.
Yeah, or maybe not. They wanted to work with me, but I somehow ended up working with them by accident. Subbing for a guy or something, or some friend of mine would go, "Dude, I can't do this gig. Do you want to do it? It's not really that great of a gig, but you want to do it." And then it ended up actually being something when I got there. For me, maybe not for him.
Just say yes to everything.
Yeah, pretty much. I did a
start.
lot of shit for free. Yeah. For the first couple of years I was there, and just to be around people doing stuff.
Because LA is very much like that. You want to meet so many people, right? And everyone's connected.
Right.
Well, I've got a friend who's a friend that's a friend that knows someone that can help you.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'd done some touring, so I thought, okay, well, I'll get down there, and I'm fairly well known in the touring community, so this should be easy, And then I got down there and realized that they don't give a shit about touring drummers. It's studio work.
Really?
And it was a whole different world, a whole different group of people. Nobody that was in touring was there or even lived there. They all lived in Nashville. So when I got down there, I realized, wow, I got to start all over from scratch, basically.
That's
so
scary.
I worked at a music store and during the day, and then at night I would go to clubs and meet musicians and listen for people. Yeah, our fucking drummer's a moron. Hey, what's up?
Yeah, right.
So I just kind of wormed my way into the situations like that, just networking with people and trying to meet people and figure out who needed what and who was who, and and it took, probably 2.5, 3 years before I finally felt like I was making any kind of real money.
Okay.
Doing it.
It generally takes sort of 2 or 3 years, even in a new city anyway, just to feel like you're starting to get your friendship circles, let alone your contacts for work and success in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Are there musicians that you would have worked with at that time that at the time you were just on the scene, but since then have sort of, or you sort of grew with them, as in like maybe people were hiring you to work with them, and at the time you were like, oh, it's just another muso on the circuit, and then they just sort of started to take off and you got to work with them.
Yeah, a couple of guys, Jesse Carmichael from Maroon 5.
Wow.
He was sort of a jobbing keyboardist at the time that I was just getting started down there, and I didn't really know him that well. But I would see him around at sessions and stuff. I would go to different smaller studios and we'd, run into each other, and I kind of got to know who he was kind of through just passing him in the hallway. I don't know if we ever really did. I think I did one project with him maybe one time. That was a band he was in that a friend of mine was producing or trying to help out. And then the next thing I knew, I heard like 4 months later his band got signed, and they, songs about Jane just was like, it was like on top of the charts, and you never saw the guy again.
Were they all just session musos that decided
I think
to start
a couple
writing?
of them were, and then I think 2 of them, I might have this totally wrong, but I think 2 of them went to school together. Adam and the guitar player, I think, went to school together or something like that. Or, they're all from that area. So they...
Bit of a Toto project. They all just...
Awesome. Just dudes that were around the scene, and then for a while, I got in with a couple of guys that were doing music for Disney shows, like Hannah Montana and the High School Musical stuff, and Selena Gomez, and they were doing demos for them, and those girls had their shows, and then they would do like songwriter solicitor demos on the side to try and get material together for like the albums that were going to be for the show. Right?
Okay.
And I did a bunch of demos for a guy named Robbie Neville, who was a C'est la vie, is the guy that he had a hit in the 80s when I was a kid called C'est la vie. It's like a pop.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's just the way it goes. Yeah, right. So he wrote all those Hannah Montana songs with another guy, and that's kind of what happened to him, in his later career. And I did a bunch of demo stuff for him, and then I met more people through him, and a couple of producers that I worked a lot with, John Algea and blanking out on their
I mean,
names
even
now,
just I had a quick glance at your website, and I mean, just that collage on the front of your website. Some of the
just
faces
to name
there.
a few. That's only the few. That
I mean, I'm
named,
looking at Ozzy Osbourne and David Foster and all these people.
Mate, David Foster. Yeah,
that was probably the greatest gig I've ever had.
David Foster.
That one,
How intimidating would that be?
Yeah.
Like.
It was pretty intimidating.
Yeah, like your nerves must have been like, because he can hear everything.
And he's got a photographic memory too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
I think he does.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have direct evidence of that, but anecdotally, he would in rehearsal, you'd play through something, and then he would go, okay, keyboards, bar 77, that's a dotted eighth, not an eighth.
Nice.
Deane, you missed the fill on the second thing, right? You got it? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Bass player, make sure you punch that accent on bar number 43. I mean, he's just going, he's not looking at anything. He's just remembering it all and he just goes right down the line, and he's cool about it.
He's a conductor.
He's not being a jerk.
But
he's just telling you,
being professional.
Holy
hit that shit, man.
That's incredible.
Everyone's just going,
to have that combo of skill, talent, creative talent, and then that kind of an intellect and intelligence combined with memory and everything. That's just
so you're not surprised by the pile of Grammys on top of his.
No, not at all.
I've seen his grand piano.
The cool thing about it is that when I was in the 8th grade, a buddy of mine who's also a drummer, a guy named Brian Kerb, who is now a movie director. We went to this little tiny high school in my hometown. It was like the graduating class was like 13 people. And Brian was a movie maker and also the pep band drummer. And he was a couple years older than me. And I would fill in for him at pep band when he was off doing movie shit, like for fun with his friends, And he wouldn't go to a Friday night game or whatever, and I'd get up to play his kit. And he was like, I don't know, a senior in high school, and I was in the 8th grade. That's basically the span of the age between us. Anyway, one day I was into songwriting and arrangement and orchestra stuff and all kinds of crazy shit, for being as young as I was. And one day he walked into like a classroom I was in or something. And he goes, hey man, I got something for you. And I thought he was gonna, beat the shit out of me or something.
I got you a knuckle sandwich.
He pulls out this cassette tape and he hands it to me and he goes, you're into that weird shit, you might like this. And he handed me a David Foster Symphony Sessions cassette.
Wow.
And I'd never heard of him before.
Right.
It was right after St. Elmo's Fire and all the shit that he had in the 80s where it went crazy. And I took it home in winter games.
Wow,
and, I listened to it. I listened to it over and over and studied it and figured out all the parts on my piano and stuff and just was really into him for a long, long time. And he kind of became a huge influence on me in terms of like composition and production. And I started following him through the Whitney stuff and the Celine stuff that he did and all the Chaka Khan shit and everything. And
so it's a real story of you meeting the hero.
Yeah, but then weirdly, when I got to LA, one of the first people that I met was a guy named Matt Della Pola, and he's a music director down there. And I think not long after I got there, he became David's music director, maybe like a couple of years. And so flash forward, like Matt and I knew each other from like 2000 to 2013 or something. And then I move over here, and he calls me up one day and he goes, hey, are you still living over in Jakarta? And I said, yeah. And he goes, okay, cool. You want to play for David?
Oh wow.
Man.
And I go,
that's
what?
Insane.
And he goes, yeah. He goes, we're going to be over there, and JR, who's regular drummer, can't do the gig.
Yes.
And
yes.
or he's with Streisand or something. It was like this crazy thing,
Wow.
whatever. And he goes, we're going to play a bunch of shows over there, and you want to do it? And I'm like,
Holy
yeah. I go, what do I need to do? He goes, nothing. Just
Bring your
be there
sticks.
when we get there. And he goes, here's the dates. He goes, I'll send you the music. I'll send you the charts.
So it's all sight reading, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All sight reading.
Any rehearsal or
Yeah, we rehearsed once.
once? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
when David got there. We
Wow.
rehearsed at a hotel in Jakarta.
So sight reading, you sight read without
Yeah.
any issue, right?
Yeah.
You- Since a child.
Yeah, since I was a
Wow.
kid. Yeah.
It's a good skill to have, eh?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
incredible.
got
I
mates, yeah.
couldn't have done it without
Yeah.
doing it. I couldn't have been in LA without it.
Because you can just walk into a gig cold and walk on stage and then, right, 1, 2.
Right.
Yeah, and I love
Or
that.
sessions,
Yeah.
you know. I mean, most of the sessions that I did earlier were totally charted.
Wow.
You know, a lot of pop stuff was all charted.
Yeah. Wow.
So the first time I was ever with David on a stage, other than that first hour-long rehearsal, was at Java Jazz in 2014 or 15.
Wow.
Damn. And that was the first time you met him personally also? Or?
I had met him one time before in LA when he was working with Seal at his house. But that's it.
You were
know,
working
and
with Seal?
I was programming some demo stuff for the other producer that was also on the record. He was an Italian guy that David worked with from time to time, and it was all out at his house. And he's not going to be here, but come out and help out. And I was there, and then he walked in, and I met him for like 2 seconds, and he kind of brushed me off. He was like, hey.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I guess that's as good as it's ever going to get. And then 10 years later, basically, I played with him.
Wow.
Started
Yeah,
playing with him.
wow, that's awesome, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what was the sort of line for you to stretch out beyond playing drums? I mean, as you play keyboards as well.
Yeah, I play keyboards, bass, guitar, and drums.
Right. So were you learning all these instruments at the same time as drums growing up, and drums is just the one you...
My mom and my dad started small. When I started getting musically interested, my dad bought me an acoustic, and I was like, what is this,
Boat pedal.
And then he bought a piano, like a player piano, and I didn't touch that. And then he sold that and he was a bass player, so he bought me a bass and tried to teach me bass, and I just couldn't fucking, it was too slow, and I just kept beating on stuff, and my mom, she finally said, God, he keeps breaking all my pots and pans.
Get him a
La
kit.
Crusade, $100 thing, and he's cracked that. Would you fucking please buy him a drum set? So my dad bought me this kit. And then, like, 3 or 4 years later, after, when I was like 8, 9, 10 years old, and like I got more aware of music and what it involved, and there was just more than a guy playing drums, and there's a singer and there's a bass, and then I started slowly picking things up and kind of teaching myself. And then I guess when I got into high school, I had a couple of really good music teachers. A guy named Matt Strausser first, and then a lady named Christine Fisher, who was my high school symphonic and jazz band teacher. And that's when I really started turning on like the real acute reading skills and really diving into like complex polyrhythms and music theory and stuff, and
Far out.
doing competitions and doing, like I went to state competition for percussion a couple of times with marimbas and stuff, and
Far out.
and did some of that kind of stuff. And then I did a thing called Interlaken, which is like a summer. Interlaken's a
You mean
program.
in Switzerland? Or?
No, it's in the States. It's in the States, but it's based over in Northern Europe. I think it originated there, and then they have camps all over the place where they,
Okay.
it's like I guess like a...
I wondered if it didn't originate in Interlaken, did it?
It may have.
Yeah, I mean that's
have.
an amazing
Yeah,
town. Anyway.
it was like, the year that I was there was a girl from Tokyo, I think, or China. She was a violinist, and everybody was like, everybody that was there that made it in, because you got to apply for it, and when we were all there, like, she was the talk of the camp. Like, oh my God, she's here,
Like genius.
Yeah,
So,
some genius, crazy good. And she was a junior in high school. And she got up to do her rehearsal, her recital at the very end of the week. And everybody's just bated breath, And she comes out, and she she looks like shit, man. Her dress is all askew, and her mascara's running, and her hair's all frazzled and shit. And everybody's like, what is going on? And she gets up there and she kind of squeaks for a second, and then she launches into this like Paganini thing for 5 minutes and just blows everybody's mind. And what happened was the girls in her dorm, 5 minutes before she went on, smashed her 1920s violin in the dumpster.
Oh, wow.
To fuck her up. To like,
Oh my God.
Wow.
and she borrowed some piece of shit, you know, court fucking thing from some dude on the side as she was walking out.
You're kidding.
And played her thing on
What a
that
rock
and
star.
just
What a
tore
champ.
it the fuck up, dude. It was
That's a
amazing.
pure
Yeah,
rock
it was
star.
Oh,
crazy.
there's got to
it was
there's
amazing.
a movie in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she won all these scholarships and stuff to Juilliard and went on to do, you know, a bunch of shit. But that's the kind of place it was. It was like this really crazy, competitive.
It
Everyone's
made
just
me, it
nutty,
reminded me of,
you know.
I thought she was having a Black Swan moment. You seen that?
It was similar, yeah. It was like, yeah.
I thought maybe she was kind of split personality where like her like the Black Swan tried to take over. Just
She could have been, man. She was deadly on that
Did the
thing,
other
man.
girls really destroy her violin?
Yeah, right.
She's
yeah.
in the dumpster like Fight Club, just dragging herself around, smashing herself up.
Tyler Durdening herself. Yeah. No, it was pretty crazy. There was a lot of weird stuff, like stories like that I heard from previous years of people, you know, just really just going
Purely
at it.
because of the competitive nature. Like
Yeah,
kids are
because
like,
the prizes were like all these major scholarships to these music's world-class
Yeah,
Vienna,
right, yeah.
you know, conservatory, and like, you know, I wasn't good enough to win any of those, but I went and, you know, participated, and it was pretty eye-opening, like how good people were and how seriously they took it. And,
Yeah, right. Wow.
and I realized, man, I don't want to be in the classical world. I just want to rock.
Classical is a new
Yeah.
realm, right? It's
a
like
beautiful-
8 hours a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nah, that's okay.
yeah, there's stress involved.
Yeah,
I mean, there's
a
a
lot of
beauty in
stress.
having the kind of education you've had with it, though, and then taking that into the rock world and into a world where, man, I mean, just the fact that, you know, you don't drink, and I'm assuming that with that you haven't sort of experimented with many other sort of off chops materials in your life. Just being in with that kind of a centered head in the rock world, that's got to be some beautiful leverage right there. Just so many people have fallen off the wagon or like missed chances at success because of that.
Oh, many.
You know, like there are so many stories. You know, I can think of loads of people I know that have
same.
gone through.
Lost the record deal because off their head.
Or just,
you know,
I've encountered a few of those people. It's ironic though. I think, at least maybe in LA or maybe the time that I was there or something, because it was kind of like post the real rush of the late 80s, early 90s, mid 90s music scene. You know, I got there in 2000. Or I got there actually 2001, a week after 9/11.
LA, you mean?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so I sort of missed like the post rock,
Right,
you know,
yeah.
Nirvana to Stone Temple Pilots, Goo Goo Dolls
That
kind of
big,
era.
Gotcha.
Thick rush of like
Right.
90s music.
Yeah,
That was massive that
The
time.
return of rock,
incredible.
basically, they
Yeah.
called it, you know. So
It's like a tsunami.
when I got there, it was like pop again, you know.
Okay.
And so most of that stuff was pretty straight-laced, and there wasn't a lot of shenanigans going on. And I think I
Interesting.
missed all
The
that.
edginess sort of.
Yeah.
I noticed it in the 2000s. Suddenly,
Yeah.
What were you
Yeah.
drawn to personally? I mean, like through all this, like outside of just your abilities, what was the music? Like, what sort of music really gets you going? What's
Old stuff, soul and,
Like soul
and
and-
rock and soul and blues and funk.
Okay.
I played a lot of funk gigs.
is that what with your with the recent producing and writing for Rita? Was that driven by your taste in music, or an equal parts what she wanted to sing, or what sort of a mix
Well,
was
she was
that?
pretty established when she came to me in terms of like what she wanted to do. You know, we rearranged a lot of her stuff to make it even more so. You know, but you know, I'd seen her perform a couple of times before we hooked up and started working on her album, and it was I was always impressed by how like classic she stuck to things. You know,
She's a machine on stage.
Man.
Yeah,
I mean,
she's
really,
a powerhouse. So
she's a powerhouse, but she doesn't lose control of herself.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
she's very controlled and very. She knows how to manage the voltage of her show.
dial it
you know?
down or just.
So
yeah.
and she's got a lot of old school influences, and you know, Aretha Franklin and Etta James and Billie Holiday, and you know,
I guess that's going to suit your passion and what you like to work with.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, my folks raised me on Joni Mitchell and you know the Eagles and.
That's good stock songwriting,
and even like in the rock era, Boston and Journey and Dan Fogelberg and you know these kinds of singer songwriters that had that kind of old school vibe. James Taylor, you know, kind of harken back to like Motown and Stax, and you know.
Wow,
so how did
solid.
you feel like going into LA and noticing that there was like a real drive more towards commercial pop? I guess.
Yeah.
Did that? Like, did you get your teeth into that and enjoy it, or was there an area of that frustrated you?
What I really loved about being in LA at the time that I was there was not necessarily the acts that I worked for, but the producers that I worked for. So the producers were all older people who were like me, who you know loved the old stuff. But we got to make a living, you know.
Got to keep
and
that
so
bus rolling.
We would try and interject as much of that kind of stuff into the things we were doing as possible, but it wasn't always possible. And so after the fact, they'd go, "Hey, you know, this is whatever." But I got this other gig on Saturday. You want to, you know,
right,
it would be like a behind the scenes. You know, I think I talked the other day online about the very first session I ever got paid for was with Andrew Love from the Memphis Horns, and at the time he was like 63, 64. At Sound City.
Oh,
nice.
Yeah, so I drove
Classic.
over there, and I was just nobody, man. A buddy of mine was playing guitar on it, and he goes, "Yeah, the drummer flaked out, and they need somebody, and just come by."
One of those
Good for
classic
you.
setups.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
He's not going to be there, you know, so it's just the engineer, and the engineer's kind of a dick, and you know, like if you can make it through that guy, you know, you can pretty much handle anything. And so I went and did it. And then they had me come back the next day, and I met him. He was there that day. And so it's just like those kinds of things, you know, like getting in with these groups of people who were doing things sort of like off in the shadows and in the corners of this pop landscape where, you know, Nickelodeon and Disney and all this crap is going on. And so we do that during the day, but then at night we'd all go do the stuff we liked, you know. Which is one of the reasons why I kind of dig the Orchard. It's like the baked potato of Bali. You know, it's like
potato of Bali.
Everybody goes there after hours to play after they've done their resort gigs.
And
you know,
just jam. And,
it's awesome. Yeah, all the musos.
And you're always welcome. You're always
Yeah.
welcome. If you walk in with a guitar, get up. Ever
Right.
sing or play it.
Yeah, it's great.
You don't know what you're going to get.
Even if you're not in the mood for performing, you know, before you know it,
Get
so
up,
get the
get
hell
up
up.
Right, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The amount of times we've all been walking out and they go, Atheron. And you're like, oh, shit. Okay. Fine.
Here's a whiskey. Get on stage.
No.
But you always love it,
Don't
hey?
leave.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
It's definitely the mark of a cool music venue when as the later it gets, the more you see people walking in with their guitar cases,
Yeah.
like from their other gigs. It's all,
Right.
you're always like, this is the spot where people are coming. Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly
Have
right.
you lived in Australia much?
I've never lived in Australia.
I never lived in Australia.
No.
Okay. When I said Toowoomba, you sort of looked like you I wasn't sure if you were recognising
No,
what I was
I mean,
saying.
I've been there a couple of times, but I've never lived there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So what brought you to Bali? What was was there an initial...
A gig?
It was.
A show?
It was a gig,
yeah, in Jakarta. And when we got there, the company that was kind of handling the talent, my now wife, worked for them. And so I got to hang out with her for like 3 weeks.
You fell in love. Very good.
Boom.
And, you know.
How fast did that happen?
Yeah,
Wow.
don't do drugs or anything.
I
but
love it that
that's a real problem.
So your first trip to Indonesia, was it?
Yeah.
First trip to Southeast Asia?
No, but
You'd already
Indonesia for
toured
sure.
through-
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I was the typical American who thinks Indonesia is like over in the Caribbean. You know? Like where's that? Like Bermuda?
goal. So your first trip, and it was a gig and you fell in love and you're still with that woman.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So I was sort of on my way out of LA at that point because I was like, you know, the recording scene there had pretty much dried up and moved to Nashville pretty much full time. Everybody that I knew was moving to Nashville, and I'm like, I don't want to move to Nashville, man. I mean, I love country, but
How long
not
ago was
that
this?
much. This was in 2010.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So I took the gig in Jakarta, which is supposed to be like a couple of weeks, and then
What was the gig, sorry?
it was like a theater show kind of thing. It was like a Cirque du Soleil type deal,
Okay.
basically. And so where I had to like write the music and play it, like, and do the orchestra and everything. Like I was the composer for it.
Oh, wow.
So a buddy of mine had directed a movie that I scored in LA, and he was the director of this thing. And he said, yeah, let's go over there and do this, you know. So I went over there and I met her and I hung out with her for like 3 weeks or 2 weeks, and then I had to leave, right? But I didn't have anything to really go back to. There wasn't any gig that I was pressing or anything. So I went back to LA, and my dad's kind of followed me all over, moving to the East Coast or, you know, LA or whatever. My dad would always move where I went, you know, so we can hang. And he goes, what are you going to do? And I go, I don't know, man. I want to get out of
Regarding
LA
the girl or regarding
no, like
life?
just what are you going to do
Right.
with yourself, you know? And I said, I don't know. It's cool over there. Maybe I'll just go like backpack over there or something, you know? So that's exactly what I did. I put all my shit in his storage unit, and I got a plane ticket to Tokyo. And I spent like 9 months with my drumsticks and a change of clothes, just going around. I went to Japan and China and Sri Lanka and Tibet.
Nice. So
Yes.
you'd never done something like that
Never
before?
done anything like that ever in my life. Never really on my own, even like.
Oh, good choice.
How rewarding is it?
It was awesome,
Yeah.
man. It was totally life changing. And
Yep.
the whole time I'm doing it, I'm Skyping with her every night.
Oh,
you know? And we're
getting
to know
closer
each
and
other.
closer
yeah,
down,
right, exactly.
down
She's
Southeast
like, when are
Asia.
you coming back to Indonesia? I'm not planning to. You know? And then like a year later, I came back and hung out with her for like a month. And then I decided, you know, fuck it. I'm just going to sell everything and move over here.
Wow.
Good shit.
Wow.
So that's what I
good.
did.
How much?
And then my dad moved over here.
oh,
Moved here
nice.
basically until he died.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Oh, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
got that time in.
Yeah.
Yep.
How much did that trip in particular just change you, I guess, or like did it open things up in you that you had never felt opened up before in terms of perspectives? And
Yeah, perspectives culturally, but especially like just how open people are when they know you're a musician and they're a musician. And it doesn't matter what you believe about the world or what language you speak or how you look or anything. If you just sit down and you start playing, they're
Yeah.
like, yeah, you know. I mean,
Same
it's just
language.
like,
Same
Isn't
language.
totally
it? Just
opens it up.
crosses
Yeah, it's
all
just a
borders.
complete universal borderless thing. And I recorded everywhere that I went. I had like one of those little H4 Zoom recorder
Zoom.
things.
The little-
the stereo pair deal.
Yeah.
And I recorded just about everywhere that I went, and I dropped pins on my iPhone so I knew where people were and I could remember.
Oh, great.
So if I ever made it back there, I could hook
Damn,
up.
that's a good way to do it. I've always saved numbers and then like years later gone, I don't know where the hell that's.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it is,
I
yeah.
do that.
The name
Especially on
sounds-
Bali, I drop pins of good cafes. It's just like,
Right, yeah.
I
okay.
teach you.
Yeah,
how.
teach me thy ways, guru master.
Yeah, somebody that I was friends with in LA taught me that. And he said,
Yeah.
yeah, just drop a pin, man. Because he had gone to Mexico City and done a similar thing.
Especially attaching it to a person to
Yeah.
call. That's,
Yeah.
And it's on your Google Drive, so it'll be there forever. You know, and
Yeah.
then, you know, when you microchipped, it'll
Yep.
ping
Yeah.
off that.
Yeah, and then you'll actually be attached to that person. I think
You will be the ping.
You'll all be part of the grid.
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah, their information's out there. All networking everybody together for Google. So I did that. I spent like 9 months doing that.
Was
And then
there any
when
point on that trip? I mean, that any sort of solo traveling through all those parts of the world can sort of bring out hairy situations as well. Was there any scary moments?
A couple, not super scary. Like I never got mugged or anything, but I would hook up with people that I learned really quickly that if you find somebody who's a local that has no life. And
Has what?
Just no life, and they just want to, like in Japan. You guys ever been to Japan?
Yeah.
They'll walk you 20 miles to where you need to go.
Yeah. Beyond. Like it's
and they're
insane.
on their way to work.
Yeah.
When you ask them, and it's just like, you don't have to come
It's
with
insane.
me.
Especially, I mean, Japan is like that country is like it's just different to the rest of the world.
Really,
as far as
that's
that stuff
totally
goes.
different.
I lost
Yeah.
my cell phone snowboarding. I dropped it in the snow.
Yeah.
By the time I was like, oh, that's right. Fuck, I'd like that. Well, just go to the office around there. This literally walked around to the office. Oh, it's already been handed in.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
Yeah, I know.
I went from there to there. Someone cut through there and dropped it off within seconds.
Yeah,
Like,
I remember Davo,
Yeah.
good mate, had come over. Like we've both worked up in the mountains in Japan most years until COVID. We were in Tokyo on the way back here when COVID hit.
Oh, okay.
And sitting in Tokyo, just lording it with all the cash from the gigs there.
Yep.
Hitting the whiskeys, and then text messages start coming through. The gig cancelled in Bali, and just going, can I get a refund on the whiskey?
yeah.
And anyway, over there,
money
up in the snowy mountains, and a mate arrived in Tokyo and was on the way up, and lost his wallet on the train. Had all like $2,000 in cash and his credit cards and everything.
everything in there,
and
yeah.
it was his first time to Japan, and he's just like, man, I'm so sorry, I'm gonna have to borrow money off you, and it's all over and screwed basically. And everyone that knew Japan well, and I didn't know Japan that well, was just saying, you'll get it back. And even I'm laughing like, mate, they're just being nice.
Yeah.
But literally 3-4 days later, it arrived at the hotel 6 hours away. All his credit cards and money was put into like little plastic sleeves just so he could quickly look at it and know that it was all safe.
Wow.
That was insane. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's just an exception to the rule, that country.
Yeah.
It's
I
incredible.
went to a hotel there when I was there, and the lady said, hey, I'm sorry, we're fully booked. And I was like, oh, shit. It was really late at night. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning. And there was a guy and a lady, I don't know if it man and wife, maybe, or brother and sister or something. Anyway, they're standing next to me, and they're checking in, and they're almost done. And he looks over at me, and then he says something to the guy that he's working, the counter guy. And then he comes over and says something to the lady who's talking to me, and she says, oh, something just opened up. And the fucking guy just gave me his hotel room.
Wow.
Oh my
And
God, what? Where did he sleep?
I realized when she said that what had happened, because I watched the whole thing, just the whole sequence of events, and I kind of put it together, and I looked at him, and he just goes,
He was Japanese?
yeah.
And where did
He
he
had
go?
a suit. I I
That's mad.
And I said,
Wow.
are you sure? And he goes, yeah.
It's like there's
It's like, oh my
an
gosh, this is
absolute
weird.
priority to make sure that visitors receive the best experience,
Yeah,
and to go away with just the utmost respect for the culture and the
There's something
and the
about that.
country.
I think they would rather not offend anybody than be inconvenienced in any way. It's just such a respectful community and culture, and it was really eye-opening, man. I spent the majority of my time there. I went there first, and then I went around, and then I went back again and spent like a month and a half there.
Nice.
Just hanging out.
And did you get involved in many other types of music on those travels? Like
I did, yeah. I played with a lot of people. Sometimes I would just sit down on the street corner with somebody who's playing and just jam with them, And then I took all that recordings that I made, and I made a record out of it.
Oh, wow.
I did like a world music solo thing, and I augmented it later with other players and stuff, the stuff that didn't turn out.
Yeah.
But and then I released it on a record label, and
Oh, cool. I'd love to hear that.
that kind of started like a little
What's it
thing.
called?
It's called Eastern Chronicle.
Eastern Chronicle.
Nice.
Yeah, I'll send it to
Good
you.
name.
Yeah, cool.
I did that, and that came out in like a couple of years after I moved over here. I finally got it released through Warner Brothers, and then like 2012, I think, or 2013, and then I went to South Africa and did the exact same thing,
Oh, wow.
but quicker. Like
Wow.
I only was there for like 4 months, and I set it up on Twitter before I went over there. I met people, and hey, I need a choir, and So
Was that all safe travels through Africa as far as?
just pretty much between Cape Town and Johannesburg.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, it was, I don't know, maybe 100 different musicians, and
Yeah, wow.
it was cool. It was a lot of fun.
And another recording, another whole
the
right,
whole
okay.
album project. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what was your there's a big difference between having a career as a session muso and then having a career that involves songwriting and like bringing in your own creativity and your own writing and all that kind of stuff. Like, were you always writing from an early age anyway, or?
No, probably when I was maybe 18, 19, 20 is when I really started writing my own stuff. It was really basic and really lame, until I was in my mid-20s and really kind of in session stuff down in L.A.
And how
meeting
did you...
real songwriters and like watching people who really did it for a living, like actually
Sure.
do it,
How did you then? How did that start to come into, like, seep into your paid career life?
Well, I've never really been. I mean, I've written stuff for myself, but I've never really, until maybe in the last 6 or 7 years, really co-written with anybody that did anything. Like stuff that went anywhere. I did a lot of composing for movies and TV while I was in LA, and I wrote all that stuff.
Well, that's.
But it wasn't it wasn't like songs. It was like
Sure.
film
Soundtrack.
score type,
Yeah.
soundtrack type stuff. A lot of instrumental music.
Wow.
But even
And
then, how did that come into it? How did you get into that part?
Oh, how did I get into that
Like to-
business?
Yeah, to go from being a session drummer to composing theatre productions and things like that. That's
Probably by chance. Let's see, probably the most obvious one was when I moved to LA. I got a job at a guitar center, which is big,
Oh, that's massive. Yeah.
It's massive. It's
yeah.
the biggest. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's huge. And I became a sales guy. I moved in across the street. I rented a place online without even looking, and we moved in across the street from this guitar center. And it was weird, man. When I got there, I applied like at home maintenance stores and a couple fast food places and stuff. Like I was not gonna shame myself and go work in this fucking drum room, Well, I finally ended up there, of course, because I couldn't get a job. So I walk over there, and the guy who was the manager is a guy named Jason Crane, and he goes, come up to my office, and the next thing I know, he makes me the assistant manager of this store. I've never sold anything in my
serious?
life. Yeah,
Wow.
just because we hit it off. Like we
Yeah.
just
Wow.
happened to hit it. I was older, and he was older, and I wasn't just some kid that came
Sure.
in to look for a job, I was married, and so we hit it off, and he was the general manager.
he probably
and I was
just
the,
heard you mention that you didn't do drugs and alcohol, and
He
he was
may
like,
have.
"You're the only guy in
He
LA
may have,
that
because
I
he
can
didn't
trust."
either. Yeah, he didn't either. So
Oh,
that
there
could have
you
been
go.
that could have
There
been
you
it. But anyway, we started working together at that store, and that store was like out of LA by a good 20 miles in this place called Covina, which is like East Los Angeles Basin, like almost out to the desert, like Palm Springs type, and not that far, but in that direction. And then he got promoted to the second biggest store in the chain, not the Hollywood Boulevard location, but the Sherman Oaks location, which was just over the Hollywood Hills on Ventura Boulevard. And he brought me with him. And then I worked there for maybe 4 or 5 months, and I was the associate manager of that store. And then he goes, because he knew I did not want to be there. Like he knew what I wanted to do with my life, because we had these conversations. We became good friends. And he goes, my advice to you would be to move up into management as quickly as you can, because that's where you'll make a bunch of money, and then you can quit,
Yeah.
He said, and I said, okay, well, tell me if there's any management stuff available, because I don't know anything about, I've never managed shit, except for bands. And he goes, yeah, so this management position opened up for the associate technology buyer for Guitar Center Corporate. So I would be assisting the main buyer of all the high-tech stuff synths, keyboards, computer software. At the time, Logic was a new thing and Pro Tools was a new thing, and it was all sort of emerging.
All I'm thinking is discounts.
Me too.
Massive,
Me too. I had this little shitty apartment, and I was just like, wow, I could build my studio. And all this stuff.
Totally.
So I go up there and I get the job, and it's an hour from where I live. Because I moved in this shitty neighborhood, clear out in East LA, and they're in like out towards Malibu. It couldn't be further from where I live, right? But I lied to them and said, yeah, I live in town, And so I start driving out there, and I realize what LA traffic is now. It takes 4 hours to get there every day, one way, So I was chronically late. I was late all the time.
Wow.
And my boss, a guy named Gene Jolly, who had run Yamaha and Shure and all these huge companies. He was the main VP of technology there. And he pulls me in one day and he goes, dude, I can't cover your ass anymore, man. You got to get here on time. And I'm like, Gene, I live in fucking Covina, bro. And he's like, holy shit. He goes, why? I'm like, I don't know. And he goes, okay. He goes, I'll tell you what we'll do. He goes, I'll send you to a Franklin Covey time management seminar that's out towards your house, and that'll give me an excuse because everybody's bitching that you're always late, and I'll tell him, hey, he's working on it. I send him to this thing, he's trying to figure it out. So I go to this thing. It's like a 3-day
It's
thing.
like rehab for late people.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's just like, so I go to this thing. It's at the Hyatt in Pasadena, right? And it's this seminar. And the first thing they do is they pair you up with somebody, and someone else that's a fucking late idiot, And it was this lady named Lindy Nisi, and she was the audio director at ABC Sports.
So, oh my God.
So
wow.
I meet her,
and
within there's like a 3-day or a 2-day thing. Within the second day, I've got it. I gave her my demo. I had my composition shit on there and some of the drum stuff that I'd done up to that point. And I go back to Guitar Center, and I'm in my cubicle doing my slave wage thing. And she calls me, I don't know, maybe a month or so later, and she goes, do you want to write some music for Monday Night Football? She goes, because there's, we're going to start doing things a little bit different. We're going to hire outside and do third-party contracts and stuff. I said, yeah, what do I do? And she explained it to me. So I started doing that, and I would go to Guitar Center, and I'd work all day. And then I'd do sessions and stuff at night. And then like Thursday and Friday and Saturday, all night, and most of the day Saturday, I'd write music for Monday Night Football. And after 9 months, when I got my first royalty check, my mechanicals from BMI, I quit GC. I called Gene and I said, dude, guess what? And he's like, you're quitting. And I go, yeah. And he goes, fucking A, do it,
Nice.
So
I
quit and started doing
the
that.
method to stop you being late to work ended up
it was just a
quit.
fluke chance.
That is crazy.
It was just the weirdest thing that I met her, and she's still there, man. She works at HBO now, but she was like one of the most powerful 100 women in Hollywood.
Oh, really?
Like in
wow.
the Variety or whatever. She's a great lady, man.
Wow.
But she gave me a huge shot doing that. And that's kind
amazing.
of what got me into television and the movie thing. And it just kind of all germinated from that experience, really.
Because you seem to have got a really wide palette of experience, it sounds like.
Yeah, I did a lot of stuff while I was there.
Yeah,
somehow,
from that corporate sort of sector, writing for, for football, and then crossing over to the theatre, and then drum sessions for rock and pop. And I mean, that's a really broad spectrum.
Well, these days you've got to be quite broad, right? Especially with technology.
I think so, yeah. The broader you are, the better off it's going to be. The less painful it's going to be.
Because in the old days, you could kind of stick at the same thing and make a living from it. But now it's, everyone's a producer, everyone's an engineer.
It was cool to be there at that time because all that stuff was just starting. I was one of the very first people to ever test Logic Pro.
Wow, really?
Yeah, because I worked at GC and Apple came in and tried to sell us on selling it. And we didn't.
Gotcha.
Nobody was an Apple reseller.
What were you recording
point.
on yourself? What were you composing on?
I was using. I think I first started on Cakewalk. Remember
Cakewalk?
Sonar?
Cakewalk.
Wow.
I remember the name, but
Was it black and white? Was it? I remember using.
I think it was green when I had it, but
the old Macs with the green or black and white screen.
Well, I had the first Mac that I ever had was a Performa,
Yeah,
which
and-
was the beige, shitty,
Big
like
bo-
after the Lisa.
Yeah, I vaguely remember sequencing some.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had one of those Lollipop Max for a while.
Yeah.
The blueberry ones or whatever they were called.
I never owned one, but I played around on one, and it was
I had
like
one of those for a while. I had
the-
one of those little toaster oven blueberry blue desktop things. It was like that big. It looked like an oversized hockey puck.
They had
I
the
it
little
for a while.
rolling external sort of GM instrument
Yeah.
sounds.
Yeah. Yeah.
This-
Yeah. Yeah, for a
Wow.
while I had my
Yeah.
drums set up in my apartment, in the front of my apartment, and I had like big refrigerator boxes like set up around it because the guy next door was a lawyer, and he was really cool. He was a defense attorney, and then but the people next door were old and they'd lived there for like 20 years, and they'd bitch every time I played.
They would have hated you.
Oh, they hated me. Yeah, they hated my guts. So I just did everything I could. I had a walk-in closet where I'd have guitar players come over and put their amps in there to record. And
Wow,
but
but still through the walls, where you can just
yeah, oh yeah. It was a nightmare.
So all the bass is just traveling through the pipes.
Exactly. Yeah, it was a nightmare. But we got it. I did a bunch of movie stuff living in that apartment.
Wow, it's amazing what you. It's funny, isn't it? How like often it's not always the tool, It's so often the expression and the ability to create with whatever you've got,
Yeah.
And when you're more restricted, sometimes that's it's like squeezing a diamond,
Right.
That's true, yeah. Like often you think, oh, once I get these plugins or once I get this or these particular
The
extra
perfect room
part,
or the-
I'll finally be writing. But it's funny. I find that there are times when I'll just be in a shitty hotel, walk into a shitty hotel somewhere that's just one of those classic, just shiny floors and nothing in there but the bed. And, and then just like clap and hear the echo and just go, oh my God, grab the guitar. And just bang, you write 10 songs. And you're just there
or
all
the
night.
bathroom. With
The bathroom, your vocal booth.
Especially in Bali. But you got that.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's certain frequencies. or
Yeah.
something. But some bathrooms just have the perfect reverb.
And it can be so inspiring. Yeah.
Yeah,
It can just
it
pull,
really is.
pull the music out of you.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got like extra tools and extra plugins and all these, those things can put you in a direction that you may not have taken before. Like you can, I love playing with something new outside of my guitaring and everything because it'll, like even just if I jump on a keyboard and find a new sound, like, oh, wow, that just inspires me to sing in a different way that I don't normally sing. So there's that. But you really have to already have sort of some drive within you. You can't sort of find the music from the tool. You know?
I usually call that like defensive writing.
Defensive writing.
Yeah, because you're not offensively coming with a vision. You're reacting to something, and it's some people do that really, really well. I don't do it well at all. I got to have some sort of an idea, or whether it's a rhythm or a melody or a counterpoint or something that works, that is in my head. I'm going, I got to get to that point somehow and figure out all this shit.
Is that when you're by yourself though?
Yeah.
But if you're with someone else,
if you're with somebody else, it's different.
Yeah.
You're bouncing ideas off of each other. But even then, sometimes some people are not musical leaders. And it's up to you then to the producer and me. Hey, let's do this. Play it like this.
Because you can hit a roadblock when you're by yourself. Sometimes like, I'm just gonna go and watch a bit of Netflix. I'm like, my brain won't work. But if you work along with someone, they get the roadblock. Okay, I'll take over for 5 minutes. Go and have a cup of coffee.
Exactly.
And then you come back in and go, oh, what you did there, and then you're back on again. So yeah.
Unless you're Sting and you come back and erase all his shit and start over.
Oh man,
genius.
So what's happening more now for you? Is it you're more producer
mostly
stuff,
production, especially with COVID. Touring, took a 2-year break. This is the last week that I've had a tour offer since 2019.
Wow.
Really, the end of 2019.
Right.
So,
do you miss it?
Yes and no. I got 2 kids now, so I don't miss it as much. But if it's a little tour, it's a quickie.
Who's that with? You can't say.
Well, there was a bunch that came in that I haven't really addressed yet.
Wow.
So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
So there's a lot of work out there, but it's just who can take it. And
Well, all of a sudden, because in my country at least, the president said, okay, masks off, everything's back, you know, and as soon as he said that, it was like everybody had everything waiting.
Wow.
They pushed a button and all the emails went out.
Yeah.
So within America, it's just like, boom, the touring business is just back on. Really?
Yeah, to a certain degree. I mean, there's a lot of details to work out. Insurance, and
insurance is a big one.
Vaccines, and all this stuff. And I don't know how they're gonna
passports. You need a passport to go to a concert.
Right.
I mean, it's a bit of a head fuck, especially if you're running a festival. It's like, am I insured to cover these people? And do we take the risk to do the festival?
Right.
I mean, it's very scary.
Yeah, some people have asked, like, well, is the government going to make you have a vaccine? And it's really not their thing. It's the insurance companies.
Yeah.
You know, the insurance companies don't want any liability.
Yeah.
And so if you give everybody COVID, they're kind of fucked.
Unless there's a waiver. You come in, or your fingerprint.
Yeah.
And then you waiver any rights if you get sick.
And I haven't heard any of that kind of talk.
Yeah.
It's been mostly if you're going to be an AIG covered tour or if you're going to be a Live Nation covered tour, you got to be vaccinated.
Wow.
Because the insurance companies won't cover the tour if you're not. So it's
such a headache.
So if anything,
it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out. I mean, I got so much shit in my body. Who cares? You know, just another thing. You know, but for a lot of people, you know, they just don't want to do it. You know, they don't.
There's a huge stance for a lot of people on that. And so if it was touring again, it'd be going back to the States and national
right
touring.
now. For me, right now. There's one that I got that's a Northern European thing, but there's a whole other set of rules there too. Because I'm not a European citizen, so you know, we're artist visas depending on vaccinations and certain vaccinations, like they won't accept in Europe the AstraZeneca thing. So if you've been vaccinated with that, it doesn't count. I mean, there's just like weird stuff like that.
Do you double up on your vaccine?
Yeah, right. Yeah, so that's the question. You know, I was talking to Pete Ray Biggin the other night about that because he's got stuff too, and we both got hit at the same time. And he's like, "Dude, I don't know what to do, man." I'm like, "Yeah, I don't either." Yeah, I don't. So it'll be interesting to see, like, as it gets closer to these dates, what changes and what kind of legislation goes through, and who's gonna do what, and how things are gonna work out.
Throw the bands in a bubble. Put it on the back of a truck, and you can't leave that bubble when you're on stage. And just bubble boys.
I have seen a couple of once. There has been a couple of those concerts. It looks fucking weird.
It is weird,
just
right?
destroys
the one with the
whole
hotel in Italy where all the people are on their hotel balconies, and the band is across at another hotel with a big sheet of plastic.
Oh, right. No, I haven't seen that one.
So weird.
I saw one where a guy was just doing a private, like he's a touring pianist, and he just decided to set up on his balcony, and there was enough, you know, close proximity balconies in the opposite hotels that everyone came out, and it was really cool footage. It was just like a little concert in the round, you know, it was incredible. But I mean, just once you start going down the bubble route, it just that whole idea of the intimate connection you get with music just seems to die. In
the States are a little, I think, more. What do I want to say? Not freer, but crazier maybe. You know, Florida and Texas, they're like, fuck it, we're doing it. We don't give a shit.
Yeah,
what the
Florida.
Texas
I heard Florida nearly
we'll
from
sue
the start.
you if you don't let us, you know, and so a lot of the tours that are sweeping through America now, they all start in Florida.
Right.
Okay.
And they spend like 3 weeks there, and they're assuming that by the time things loosen up a little bit more, that 3 weeks will be over. They'll be able to book up the East Coast, and you know, so they're kind of using it as like a buffer,
right?
You know, to wait for the other states to like get a clue and
maybe they can
follow
just
suit.
Second stop
border
Boston
festivals right on the borders, so they can just come out.
just looking over this line in the sand,
just going around all the borders.
Right. That'd be awesome.
There'd be loopholes.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how it all works out, but. I mean, I just am happy that it's like starting to come back.
Yeah,
you know,
it'll be slow, but
it'll be slow.
Like New Zealand nailed it like last year, like all through the summer. Like summer starts around November, December.
Yep.
Like I was looking back home, no one's got masks on. These festivals, thousands of people, all the venues are packed.
Yep.
Really good for the New Zealand local scene because
Yep.
no internationals could come in.
Right.
So all these lower tier musicians that could never get onto these festivals.
Yes.
So they're getting bigger. So
Yes.
it's really made our music scene rich, you
Yeah,
know. So,
exactly.
but no masks, no nothing. We just no COVID.
Just killing it.
Just killed
Yeah,
it.
I was talking to a mate in New Zealand today, Dale.
Yeah, Dale.
He was just saying, mate, it's just a pleasure over there,
Yeah.
just bouncing around between festivals.
Yeah.
Just loving it.
Yeah, it's
Massive.
It's pretty interesting how it's all unfolding. I mean, there's even a parameter here that you know. I mean, talking about what I'm doing now is, you know, Graham, who you guys know, obviously Graham's store. We're starting a venture together to get Indonesian musicians involved in international things.
Yeah, great.
And so the timing of this couldn't be better because a lot of American musicians and even European musicians are still kind of gun shy on all this.
Yeah.
And it's a great time to just slip Rivaba in there.
Yeah,
Rivaba.
Or the Blues Mates or
Yeah.
whoever, like, and get them in there.
So someone else that, you know, a spot that would normally be just jumped on is sort of people are just a little bit bated breath on whether they should be involved yet. And
it's
so you
just
just go,
like,
no worries. I mean, the same way you were getting your first gigs on the touring circuit or with session work.
Yeah, it's
This
just
guy
like
can't do
taking
it, so-
advantage of the hesitation, you know, a little bit. Graham and I submitted 2 bands just yesterday for a festival in Canada that they're gearing up, and it's a rock and blues festival, so it's perfect for these guys. And we got their passports and all their
good shit.
everything. I mean,
Wow.
we got everything, so we can just nail them with a link to everything and
Great.
their songs, their photos, everything.
I mean, it's such
So we'll
an
know in a couple of days if they're-
unbelievable market of musicians here.
Yeah.
So
That's
it's
crazy.
so, I mean, that really makes sense that you as a producer and with all your contacts and your background and history in the States, and it just makes sense that if you're based here, why not set up that kind of a bridge between, and, you know, you be the bridge for these guys.
Yeah, to me, it's like the best kept secret on this side of the world. I mean, who knew?
Yeah.
You know?
It's interesting because a lot of
Yeah.
people have tried certain things here that you know, they've come up with so much. Just there's a lot of hurdles to jump through in terms
lot
of
of red
getting
tape.
things off the ground,
Yeah.
on the ground here. Sorry, like in terms of festivals or bringing acts in here. But that's a different angle. I mean, it's, you know, there's one thing bringing acts in and then getting local people to support that act within the country, so they've had an opportunity to support that international act. But actually getting the act out of the country.
That's really what he and we've spent weeks discussing that, going places for 2-3 days, huddling down and we got
that's
we
great,
got
man.
legal pads of shit. We're just just trying to, because what I've observed living over here is, we were kind of talking about it a little bit before we started. There's a lot of people who don't want it to happen. There's a lot of local people here who don't want these acts to go anywhere because it's lucrative if they stay.
Right,
You
yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And
What's that small town mentality?
Exactly.
It's a small
Exactly.
island.
And I dealt
Yeah.
with that in Corvallis when I was growing up. It's the
Yeah.
same shit, Just
Yeah.
just play frats and sororities and it's all good. You can make a good living,
Once they're gone.
Imagine if
they're
Pearl
gone.
Jam and all
Yeah.
those guys had never left Seattle.
Exactly.
I mean, it puts the funny thing is, ironically, it puts the place on the map.
Right.
Yeah.
It speaks, and there's such a beauty in touring anything from your culture to other places to represent your country.
Right.
It's why it's
Well, look at the Van Halen brothers,
Yeah.
half Dutch, half Indonesian.
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
You can see it when just
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason why Indonesian musicians should be playing on American records, as far as I'm concerned.
Fly the
Absolutely.
flag, get
You
over
know?
there and just
Yeah, I
And
just put one of our friends on that pop punk record that I'm talking about.
Oh, nice.
He just played guitar on it and just kicked ass, man.
yeah.
and
There's just no
inspires
reason to not
the
do
next
it.
generations coming up, and it'll
Yeah,
inspire
man.
them, and it'll just get bigger and better, and that's what happens.
Yeah.
I mean.
So Graham and I are focused on exit strategies for these guys. You know,
Right.
how do you get out and penetrate other markets other than this one? Because this one's really small.
It's
You guys
limited.
know,
It's
right?
very
just
limited,
really
yeah.
limited.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of musicians. It's really saturated here with a lot of really good players. And
Oh, yeah.
so the more we can push them out and get them playing gigs and festivals and other international touring and records and recording and doing all this kind of stuff. I think the better, obviously, economically for them and career strategy wise, it just makes total sense to me.
Oh man, that's awesome.
So,
that's I haven't really seen anyone doing that. I've really only heard people talking about the ideas of setting things up here. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, we're working on it. We're fingers crossed. Yeah. We've encountered some difficulties with different.
Well, it starts with one. And it has to take one to go, okay, that was successful, that was a good model.
Exactly.
And maybe you just have to focus on just one, and then there's another one. And then that gateway just opens.
Yeah, fully.
Yeah. So it's pretty exciting. It just feels good to be part of something that's moving.
Yeah. It's funny too how there's always a point where you reach where you want to start giving back to, like where your struggle to sort of get somewhere yourself switches into just wanting to use that knowledge and that position you're in to push other people.
Yeah, man, I've had so much help. We could do another 4-hour podcast just on that. Just the people that have been there for me and G too. We talk about that all the time, and just especially over here. Two white guys. Typically would be viewed as, who are these motherfuckers coming in here? It's like colonialists.
Just another one.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But we've really tried hard to show and prove that, it's we're not taking anybody's money, we're not charging anybody for anything. The thing is, we both have careers. We've got careers that are strong, and these guys that we play with and that we all know and we all have relationships with, it sucks to see them struggling so hard and be so talented. And just because of a lack of opportunity, it just doesn't make any sense.
No,
there's just so much shit going on
but
out
especially
there.
when you've spent the kind of time that you, how long have you lived here now? Would you say 12 years?
I've lived in Indonesia proper for 10 years.
Yeah,
this is my 10th year.
Geez, like 15 or something?
Easily.
Yeah,
15,
it's
17.
It's very different to someone just sort of arriving in a place fresh and going, what can I do here to make a difference? And and often that is skewed by what they're wanting to get out of it.
Right.
But when you've actually lived in a place for, over 10 years,
technically, my kids are Indonesian.
Yeah. And so
I want to put, we're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
I'm never moving back there.
Yeah.
So...
is there anything that you really miss about the States or about having
my mom?
Yeah, okay.
Hi, Mom.
Sure.
That's really it, though.
Okay.
It's really it.
So proximity to that music scene isn't an issue?
No. I've been in it so long
that,
we still do all the same shit we did. We just do it over the wires.
Yeah, okay. Is there any other sort of, I guess, people that you've worked with over the years? You've worked with some pretty big names like Britney Spears, Stevie Wonder, right?
Yeah, I've played with Stevie
What's your top five?
of times.
What's your top five, like studio, live, crazy?
Working with Stevie was an outcropping of David Foster. That was I call it the David Foster hub. There's just millions of people that guy deals with all the time.
So once you worked with David Foster, that was it. Like you were plugged into this other world of
kind of. I was never David's regular guy. But when he would come over to Southeast Asia, there were always opportunities like that. That's how I got in with him, and so. But because of that gig, I had the, I guess, sort of the unofficial street cred to do other things, and so I played with Stevie twice.
Was that live?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Cool. Wow.
And he's got a regular guy too, a really killer drummer. It's amazing. But it just so happened that, it worked out where I was there already playing with somebody else, and he needed somebody, and it was a festival, and,
Wow.
So Stevie was great. One of the best gigs, just sentimentally, when I was 8 years old, just by a weird chance of fate, I played with Al Green for 2 nights.
Yeah,
wow.
Nice.
Yeah. My dad was in a band, and he was playing bass, I was playing drums.
With your dad?
With your dad?
With my dad. Yeah, we were in a
dad
band.
and Al Green.
Yeah.
Oh.
No. My dad and I played in a band.
Right.
And it was like a church band thing that we traveled up and down the West Coast. And Al Green at the time was the Reverend Al Green, right?
Yeah.
And so he was doing the Christian music thing, and he was at the same church we played at the same night we opened for him. And as a like cute, hey, this little boy plays drums kind of a thing, my dad was like, hey, go up there, you know, because he said, is anybody in the audience a musician, you know?
Oh, awesome.
And I got up and played with him, and then a couple of nights later I played with him again because he came and said to my dad, you know, hey, your kid's pretty good, you know, do you mind if I use him again? Because it was funny. It was like a comedy bit, you know?
Yeah.
And so I played with him, and I still have a recording of it. And
Man, that would have gone straight, like when you started actually going for session work, straight in the bio. Session with Al Green. Yes.
8 years old.
yeah, I think for a while it wasn't my bio, and then I was just kind of like, it's kind of not really, you know.
You still did it.
Yeah,
I mean, I did it,
mate.
but, you know, I also, you know, whatever. So that was a pretty big highlight, and David Foster, of course, was probably the biggest highlight for me. I remember seeing was it Beyonce or somebody doing that Super Bowl halftime show, and everybody's bitching, well, what is she fucking lip syncing? Well, dude, it's 65,000 people, man. You can't hear shit.
Going out,
She's in a tiny postage stamp stage in the middle of a massive stadium. It's an open air stadium.
Sounds going to be
There's
shit.
65,000 people screaming their fucking head off. There's no way in the world it's going to be clear.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, remember,
So-
there's a Beatles concert. I'm sure there were plenty, but there's some big outdoor stadium Beatles concert. I remember, like, all you can hear is,
They had
see the
Sullivan
Beatles.
tapes, man.
Yeah.
All those girls screaming, and you know, even Twist and Shout, the actual studio recording of it was a live recording, and that's all you can hear is people screaming.
Like
It's
playing at Single Fin.
You got the DJ on one side, it's the band here.
It's the only time I've been doing a gig with when I was with a band, and I've turned around and looked at Ian, and I had no idea where to place my note. Like, it's the only gig I've ever done in my life where I'm like looking at Ian going, I don't know what to sing, because all I could hear, you can hear the. Have you ever played up there?
Yeah, I've never played there, but I've been there.
Yeah,
and
you've got
bands,
the
and they're just like-
DJ, all the sound of the DJ leaking through, and then the sound is just horrendous. You've actually got so much white noise, your ears are just going.
Yeah.
Well, it's all the overtones, the low and
You can't work out what you can't hear the key. It's just all this mishmash. And I'm like trying to sing this song, and Ian's just looking at me and we're just cracking up. I'm going, I know this is fucking wrong. But you look up and you're like, everyone's just so wasted. No one gives a shit.
Right. Nobody notices but you.
Yeah, the Beatles could have literally just done whatever they wanted, and those girls wouldn't have noticed.
Yeah. Not played, just
Yeah.
pull out their plugs and.
Yep.
Yeah. So give us your Ozzy Osbourne.
Yeah, it was a weird deal. It was a Super Bowl commercial.
I love the way already Ozzy Osbourne story has got the word weird in it.
Yeah, he was great. I mean, it wasn't really a musical gig in terms of like doing a show with him or anything, but it was like a commercial for a Super Bowl ad with him and Justin Bieber.
Oh, okay.
And it was like old bull, young bull
With
type
Justin
deal.
Bieber and Ozzy Osbourne.
Yeah,
What a
I think
thing.
you can still find it on YouTube.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's
So
like
were you performing, or was it just a TV commercial?
It was I just did the drums for it that they used in the thing.
Right.
But it's pretty funny. It's a pretty funny commercial.
When was that?
2006 maybe, 2007, something like that.
That's
long time ago.
Justin Bieber, I
15
still
years
see him
ago.
as a 13-year-old.
Yeah, when it was
funny,
right
isn't it?
right
Yeah.
after he really hit the big time.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh,
it was
right,
like
Justin
in the peak
Bieber.
of his,
Yeah.
right after the baby,
Yeah.
whatever.
Wow.
But
I remember he was here, stayed at Alila Suri out this way, and the manager, when I did a gig out there, and the manager's like, fucking Justin Bieber was just here and he ruined all the. They were like, what are they called? Those things you ride on, segways.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because they had all these segways for getting around the property, and Justin Bieber and all his mates just jumped on the segways straight down to the beach, just ruined
Straight
them.
into the sea.
Just ruined them all of them. Didn't give a
There
shit.
was so
mate.
many
Just, like,
stories
just write
about
it off,
him.
write
I'll
it
just
off.
credit
Just-
card it.
Oh, yeah.
yeah, the lizard and stuff. And did you guys
Oh,
ever
the
look at
lizard
that?
one in
Yeah.
Australia, yeah. To all the kids, screw. I saw that video footage. Apparently, he shapeshifted.
Oh, being a
He
shapeshifter.
didn't
What
shapeshift.
the hell?
But all these kids are screaming. Someone just posted it and typed in lizard. And
Right.
that
Dude,
was
if he turned into a
bullshit.
lizard, you wouldn't have survived very well.
No,
I've heard
no.
about your love of lizards.
Fuck you, Graham Store. You asshole.
Yeah, I said to G, have you got any particular stories I should bring up in the podcast? And the one thing he says is, if you've got a giant monitor lizard or a crocodile
He
somewhere,
doesn't like those
and I'm like,
things.
surprise, surprise, mate, I
What
don't
a
have a spare
jerk.
crocodile in the villa.
I'm going to kill him. I'm going to see him right after we're done
Yes.
here. And
The pleasures of being close to that guy.
So
Jesus.
how was Robbie Williams? Did you do a tour with him, or was it?
Yeah, I played with Robbie a couple of times.
Was it when
Yeah.
he's clean, pre or post, or
Both.
both?
yeah.
So was it crazy? Was he?
No,
No.
he's a great guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a great guy. It's an act, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been a couple of people like that. I worked with Jessica Simpson way early in my career. It's the same thing.
I guess they really
Total-
like that type of
Maybe
a famous.
not an act. I probably shouldn't say that.
It
but,
was just embellished a little bit.
It's the
Yeah.
media.
Yeah.
The media.
Yeah.
You know, they
Right.
get a hold of it, and it's
Yeah.
something way more than it really is.
I actually
Yeah.
saw an interview of Robbie Williams, and he's seen UFOs. And I know you're a UFO
Oh,
man.
right.
You should.
Yeah,
He's seen UFOs a few times.
Oh, really?
And he was serious. He was on 60 Minutes. He was
Yeah.
like, no, I've seen it. And were you high? And he was like, no, I was clean. And
Yeah, nice.
look into it, mate. Do your
I'll
research.
look it up, mate.
Yes.
I'll do my UFO research again.
Join the dots,
I'll
mate.
continue
Follow
my
the
UFO
Yellowbrook Road, mate. Follow the
Oh,
trail.
mate. Absolutely.
Anyway.
Yeah,
Mate, we might wrap it up. It's
Yeah.
been a good
fantastic.
hour. Thanks for
an hour
coming
and a
on,
half,
dude.
Of course.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
guys are doing cool stuff. I love it.
Cheers, man.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for
Yeah,
having me.
we'll do another one sometime. I'd love to do another one, especially once you start getting these boys out to the world.
Yeah.
Catch up and all that.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Cool.
thanks, Bali Rooftoppers. We're going to sign off. Have a good night, day,
Peace.
wherever you are. Adios, amigos.
Ciao.
Get off the fucking roof!